We covered the 5-second rule a couple years ago here at Healthcare Triage, and just a few weeks ago, colleagues at the New York Times and many other news sources wrote about a new study debunking the 5-second rule. This was not the first such study to argue that there is no safe time for food to be left on the floor. Our continued focus on this threat has long baffled me though. Why are we so worried about the floor? So many things are more dangerous than that. That's the topic of this week's Healthcare Triage. I first became interested in the 5-second rule years ago when I co-authored a book on medical myths. We cited a number of studies that showed that food that touched household surfaces, even for brief periods of time, could pick up bacteria or other harmful substances. This most recent study was similar in that it tested a variety of foods, a variety of substances, for a variety of times. And like those other studies, this one found that food touching the floor, even for a very short amount of time, could pick up bacteria. There's no magic amount of time that prevents transmission. Thus, the 5-second rule is debunked. But even though I know the 5-second rule is silly, I still eat food that's fallen on my kitchen floor. Why? Because my kitchen floor isn't really that dirty. Our metric shouldn't be whether there are more than 0 bacteria on the floor. It should be how many bacteria are on the floor compared to other household surfaces. And in that respect, there are so many more places in your house that pose a greater concern than the floor. Perhaps no one in the United States has spent more time investigating the occurrence of bacteria and other markers on public surfaces than Charles Gerba. He's a professor of microbiology and environmental sciences at the University of Arizona, and he's published many papers on the subject. In 1998, he and his colleagues investigated how well cleaning products could reduce coliform bacteria counts on household surfaces. As part of that research, they measured various locations in the house before any interventions. They found that the kitchen floor was likely to harbor, on average, about 3 colonies per square inch of coliform bacteria, 2.75 to be exact. So there are some. But here's the thing. That was cleaner than both the refrigerator handle, 5.37 colonies per square inch, and the kitchen counter, 5.75 colonies per square inch. We spend so much time worrying about what food might have picked up from the floor, but we don't worry about our hands touching the refrigerator before eating it. We also don't seem worried about food touching the counter in the same way we do the floor, but the counter is just as dirty, if not dirtier. Same thing happens in the bathroom. I know tons of people who are worried about the toilet seat, but it's cleaner than all the things I just mentioned at 0.68 colonies per square inch. What's dirtier in the bathroom? Almost everything. The flush handle, 34.65 colonies, the sink faucet, 15.84 colonies, and the counter, 1.32 colonies. Things get dirtier when 1, lots of hands touch them, and 2, we don't think about it. We worry about the floor and the toilet seat, so we clean them more. We don't think about the refrigerator handle or the faucet handle as much. If we carry this logic out further, however, there are things we handle a lot and never really clean. One study, for instance, found that about 95% of mobile phones carried by healthcare workers were contaminated with nosocomial bacteria. More than half were contaminated with Staph aureus, and about 40% of those were methicillin resistant, or MRSA. Think about how many people have handled the money in your wallet. A study of $1 bills found that 94% were colonized by bacteria, 7% of which were pathogenic to healthy people, and 87% of which were pathogenic to hospitalized or immunocompromised people. Where do you keep your money? In a wallet or purse? When did you last clean that? It's likely filthy. I see people pay for food every day and then eat what they're handed with no concern that the food might have been contaminated, but the money and the hands that just held it could be much dirtier than the floor. There are so many studies out there showing that things we touch every day are so dirty. Gas pump handles, ATM buttons, remote controls, light switches, computer keyboards. The dirtiest thing in your kitchen by far is likely to be the sponge you keep near the sink. Most people almost never wash or disinfect them. Gerba found they had, on average, more than 20 million colonies per square inch. All of this should remind you that it's always a good idea to wash your hands before you eat. Good hand washing practices are still one of the best ways to prevent yourself from getting sick. Outside of that, people react to news like this in one of 2 ways. One is to become paranoid about everything. Such people start to clean compulsively, worry about all the things they're touching, and use hand sanitizer obsessively. The alternative is to realize that our immune systems are pretty hardy in general. We've all been touching this dirty stuff for a long time without knowing it, and do just fine. I clearly fall into the latter group. If I drop food on the floor, I still eat it. I do that because the harm I might get from the floor is less than many other things and not worth my concern. You may feel differently. Either way, make an informed judgment based on relative risks, not on an arbitrary amount of time one thing's been touching another.
Healthcare Triage is supported in part by viewers like you through Patreon.com, a voluntary subscription service that allows you to support the show through your monthly donation. We'd like to thank our research associates Joe Sevitz and Karen Green, and our Surgeon Admiral, Sam. Thanks, Joe and Karen. Thanks, Sam. More information can be found at patreon.com/healthcaretriage.